All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we are diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
A classic.
It is. And it's one of those ones where so many people you have read it or say they've read it or bought it and it's sitting on their shelf.
Right,
But
exactly.
we're really going to pull out some of the core ideas and talk about, how it holds up today.
Yeah, because it's been around for a little while.
It has been around for a minute.
Yeah,
And really think about like, okay, if you were going to actually put this into practice, what would that even look like?
exactly. What can you take away from it? And is it still relevant?
Exactly.
Sorry.
Totally. And I think it'll be fun to kind of poke at some of the stuff too and be like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Mm.
The whole thing is about Robert Kiyosaki's two dads, right?
Yeah, his real dad and then his friend's dad.
Yeah. So you have the poor dad, air quotes,
I mean,
obviously,
cool.
and the rich dad. And it's not just like a cute title. It's really about their mindsets and how they approach money.
Well-
And one of the examples I thought was really interesting is, he talks about how they would each react to, like, if you wanted to buy something,
Yeah.
and the poor dad would be like, we can't afford that.
Yeah. Which is so common
On
to
record.
hear growing up,
Yeah. Yes.
And it gets ingrained.
Totally. Like, even if you didn't hear it explicitly, you just kind of absorb it.
Yeah, it becomes your experience, right?
Yeah, totally.
But the rich dad would say, like, well, how can you afford it?
Oh, that's good.
And that's a very different.
It is. It's like one word just changes the whole.
It changes your perspective. It makes you think differently about the problem.
Absolutely. And have you ever noticed yourself doing that, even like in your everyday life?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first step, is just noticing it, right? Like, oh, there's that script playing in my head again.
Totally.
So Kiyosaki argues that these early influences shape our kind of financial blueprint.
Yeah, like money scripts or whatever. We all have them.
Exactly. And it's not necessarily about how much money your parents had.
Right. It's more about their relationship with it.
Right. It's their attitude towards money.
Exactly.
So the poor dad was educated, hardworking.
Right. Like, not a bad guy.
No, not at all. He just had different values,
Totally.
but always stressed about money.
And that's the thing, right? Like, it's not always about how much you earn. It's about your mindset around it.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about those contrasting values,
Yeah.
because I think that's where it gets really interesting.
Definitely.
So first up, overall money mindset.
Okay.
The poor dad saw money as something to be, avoided, a potential source of stress.
Right. Like something that could be taken away easily,
Yeah.
and then you would be without it.
Exactly. Whereas the rich dad saw it as what? Like a tool.
Yeah, a tool, a way to build freedom and opportunity.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. Like it's the difference between being afraid of the deep end of the pool
Okay, I like where you're going.
and seeing it as a chance to dive in and explore.
Yes, that's a really good analogy.
Right.
Yeah. And that totally plays into like their work ethic too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So the poor dad is very much like, job security,
Yeah, the traditional
go to school, get a good job, climb that ladder,
Right. Exactly.
which, hey, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but
Of course not.
it's just one way to look at it.
It's one perspective.
Exactly.
But the rich dad challenges that.
Okay, so what does he say?
He's all about, encouraging Robert and his friend to learn valuable skills.
Oh, interesting.
Create their own businesses, build assets that generate income.
Which, again, not saying everyone needs to be an entrepreneur, but it's
Yeah.
more about broadening your horizons.
Exactly. It's about thinking beyond just trading your time for a paycheck.
Yes, and this is where it gets interesting.
Okay, lay it on me.
Their views on taxes.
Ooh. Yeah.
Juicy.
This is always a fun one.
It is. So the poor dad, like a lot of people, sees taxes as this burden.
Right, which is totally understandable.
It's a common perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
But the rich dad is different.
Okay, how so?
He sees them as like the cost of a functioning society.
Okay, interesting. And he really emphasizes financial literacy.
Which is key.
Yes, like understanding how taxes work, not just complaining about them.
Oh, that's huge.
Right. And even, exploring legal ways to minimize your tax burden.
Okay, so like being smart about it.
Exactly. Using that knowledge to your advantage.
That's huge because so many people just kind of throw their hands up in the air with taxes, but this is like, no, become best friends with it.
Right. Knowledge is power. Right.
Exactly.
And then perhaps the most important thing that the rich dad teaches is about managing emotions.
Okay. Yeah, that's huge.
Because it's so easy to let fear control your financial decisions.
Oh my gosh, yes. Fear of failure, fear of risk.
Exactly.
Like, what if I lose everything?
Right. And then you end up not doing anything.
It's so true.
But the rich dad encourages calculated risk-taking.
Oh, there's that word again. Calculated.
Right. Not just jumping in blindly, but being strategic and thinking long term.
So instead of, what if I lose everything? It's, what if this goes amazingly well?
Exactly. It's about flipping that script.
Love it. Okay, so before we go any further,
Yes.
I'm curious,
Tell me.
what's standing out to you so far about these like contrasting mindsets?
I think for me it's really about recognizing those internal scripts, right?
Yeah, totally.
And speaking of scripts, Kiyosaki uses this powerful metaphor in the book, the rat race.
Oh, the rat race. Everyone's heard of it.
Right.
But what does it actually mean, though?
It's that feeling of being stuck on a treadmill,
Okay.
even if you're earning a decent income.
Yeah, like you get a raise, but then your expenses just magically expand.
Exactly. You're working harder, but not actually getting ahead in terms of financial freedom.
You're just chasing that carrot on a stick constantly.
Exactly.
And that's where Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I think, really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Because it's not about saying, like, jobs are bad or don't work hard.
Right.
It's more about understanding that, like, there are different ways to play the game.
Exactly. It's about shifting your mindset.
Yeah.
And one of Kiyosaki's examples that always stuck with me is the story about Robert and his friend being offered like increasingly ridiculous amounts of money to mow lawns.
Oh, yeah. Like, it just keeps going up and up.
Right. And they could have easily fallen into that trap of more money, more problems.
Oh, totally. Because you start making more, and then you're like, well, now I need this and this and
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
But
They
instead,
stayed strong. They stuck to their vision.
they did. They chose to focus on their long-term goal, which was building a comic book library.
Which, come on, that's a great goal.
Right. And it perfectly illustrates the Rich Dad philosophy, which is, it's not about chasing those quick wins.
It's about playing the long game.
Exactly. It's
Oh.
about investing your time and energy in building something that generates lasting wealth and freedom. I like it. I like it. Okay, so that brings us to what I think is like the heart of the book,
Oh, okay. What's that?
which is understanding the difference between assets and liabilities.
Yes. Such a fundamental concept.
It is. But why do you think it's so important for people to really wrap their heads around this?
Because, let's be honest, most people, when they think about improving their finances, they focus on earning more money.
Right. It's like, I need a raise.
Exactly. But if you don't understand how to manage that money,
Right.
how to make it work for you,
It's just going to disappear.
you're going to stay stuck.
Yeah.
And that's where assets and liabilities come in.
Okay, so break it down for us.
All right, so assets make you money.
Okay.
Liabilities cost you money.
Simple enough, right?
Right, in theory.
Okay, bud.
But in reality, it can be trickier than it seems.
Yeah.
And Kiyosaki uses a really interesting example, a car.
Oh, okay.
We often think of a car as an asset, right?
Yeah, you own it. It has value.
Exactly. But in most cases, a car is actually a liability.
Whoa. Okay, mind blown.
Because you've got loan payments,
Oh, yeah.
insurance, gas, maintenance,
All that stuff adds up.
all those expenses add up. And that's what Kiyosaki wants us to realize,
Interesting.
to look at our spending habits through this asset versus liability lens.
I like that, yeah.
Like, what are we spending money on that's actually draining our resources?
And instead of building them up, yeah.
Exactly.
Ooh. Okay, so then how do we start making that shift? Like, what are some of those common hidden liabilities that we should, like, be aware of?
Well, that big house you mentioned earlier, I think that can be a big one for people.
Yeah, because you think of it as an investment.
You do. I'm building equity, right?
Right.
But if you're not careful, those mortgage payments, property taxes, all the upkeep,
It's a money pit.
it can be if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's like that saying, don't live in a house you can't afford, even if it means living with your parents or whatever.
Right.
Okay, maybe not that extreme,
Maybe not that extreme.
but you get the idea.
You get the idea.
And it's not just about housing, right? It's also like
Oh, it's everything.
those recurring subscriptions you don't even use.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff. The latest gadget.
Right, the keeping up with the Joneses mentality.
Yes. Oh, and the lattes.
Oh, the lattes will get
They
them.
get me every time. But that's why this stuff is so important to be aware of.
Absolutely.
Because it's not about, like, you can't buy anything nice for yourself.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
It's just, like, be mindful.
Be intentional with
Yes,
your money.
Exactly.
And then once you start to like free up some of that cash flow,
Right. By reducing those liabilities.
exactly, then you can start thinking about, okay, how do I build assets?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Rich Dad, Poor Dad does talk about that.
Yes, it does. It offers some good insights on that.
Although some of that specific investment advice, I don't know.
It's a different time now.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
Like, that book came out in 2000.
The internet was a baby.
I know. I remember. So different.
Right.
But I think the core principles still hold up, right?
Absolutely.
Like that idea of, creating multiple income streams, having your money work for you, even while you sleep.
Exactly. Passive income.
Passive income, yes.
Building wealth that works for you, not the other way around.
Yes, I like that. I like that. Okay, so if we were to boil everything down that we've talked about today into one major takeaway for our listeners,
Okay.
what would it be?
I think it's this. Building wealth is a journey.
Ooh, I like that.
It's not a destination.
Okay.
And it starts with a shift in mindset.
So it's all mental.
It starts there, right?
Right.
From that, I can't afford that, to how can I afford it?
Oh, there it is again. That question, I love it.
It's about being willing to, challenge those assumptions.
Yeah.
About money, to learn, to grow, and to never stop investing in yourself.
Because you are your greatest asset or something.
There you go. There you go. I love it. Okay, so the good news is you don't have to be born with this knowledge.
No, right? Absolutely not. It's something anyone can learn.
Absolutely. Financial literacy is a learnable skill.
Yes, I love that.
It's never too late to start.
To start making changes.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, well, there you have it, folks. Our deep dive on Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
A classic.
Truly. Hopefully you're walking away with some fresh perspectives, maybe some practical tips.
Extra things to think about.
Yes, and maybe even a little bit of, fire in your belly.
Yes, to take control.
To be like, all right, I got this. I'm going to figure out my finances.
You have the power.
Yeah.
To change your financial story.
Love it. All right, that is it for today's deep dive.
Until next time.
Until next time. Stay curious, keep learning, and keep those wallets growing.
And invest in yourself.
Thank you all for listening to today's program. We were very happy to share this interesting content with you. If you like our program, please don't forget to follow our podcast so you won't miss any new episode. At the same time, if you find our program helpful, please feel free to leave us a 5-star rating.